All right, guys, joining us, he does each and every single Tuesday, our good friend, JC Shurburtt of Inside the Gamecocks of the Big Spur. JC, what's going on, my friend? Appreciate you taking the time as you do each and every single week.
Yeah, thank you. Good to be on today. I feel a little better, strangely enough, than I did last week. That Florida loss took a lot out of me, but quite frankly, Chris, after Xavier Legette got hurt on Saturday, I was like, well, there goes this game. And then when Tree Babalete got hurt, and I've backtracked on this since then. I was like, well, there goes the season. I just don't know how that injury situation can get any worse. Lots of times, in my opinion, I feel like injuries come across as excuse making injuries and schedule normally because the schedule you're supposed to play. You know how it is in the SEC. Injuries are going to happen. But my goodness, man, on that offensive line, you solve one problem one week, and that's what good coaches do. And they've done I think they've done a good job solving problems. But then another problem pops up. It's like that Bugs Bunny cartoon or Wile E. Coyote where he's putting his fingers in the dam, and another thing, another leak springs. My goodness! And then you look at the situation going into A&M. It's not good. So and a disappointing performance. I'm not sitting there saying, well, injuries are why they lost the game, because obviously it's yet another game where you're down 3 touchdowns before you make adjustments on defense. I'm over that. I don't know why that continues to happen. It puts everybody else, offense, special teams, whatever, in a big hole, and you almost have to be perfect to get out of it. And that's happened too many times, I think, the last 3 years. And they got to find a way to not let that happen when teams are getting the best of them early. Stat for you: Missouri's won 3 against Beamer and Clayton White, and they've outscored the Gamecocks 58-10 in the first half, and have not outscored the Gamecocks in the second. They've been outscored 40-30. So, and that's in 3 losses, 2 of them by double digits. So they're getting the best of Carolina early and just coasting to wins. And unlike maybe, I don't know, some games where you kind of look at it and go, well, they played well the second half and fall back. I think we've learned enough now to know that's not going to carry over. I mean, that's just something that it is not something to build on at this point because it's happened over and over again. So that's my, I'm not absolving coaching, playing, whatever, in terms of the loss. I just couldn't. But I was as stunned as I was with how bad the defense was yet again. I was even more stunned with the football gods definitely not smiling on Carolina with a very significant injuries in the football game.
Yeah, JC. I mean, admittedly, I drank some of the Kool-Aid. Maybe some of my garnet and black blood shone through when I picked the Gamecocks to beat Missouri. But I thought at minimum that would be a really close, competitive, back and forth ball game. So to see the way it played out was somewhat shocking. JC, before we dive into the details of this game, I want to start, though, on a different note, the recruiting side of things, because last week we were so slammed with reacting to the Florida game and, of course, looking at the Missouri game. We didn't get into there's some good news and there's maybe some not so good news. The good news is the Gamecocks picked up a commitment, Jalewis Solomon, and that was a big one, right? We talked about before the staff, how highly they thought of him, think he can be an impact player on the outside, immediately on the defensive side of the football, which Lord knows you need those guys right now. So the Jalewis Solomon news. And then this morning we learned Daniel Hill, the crystal balls have come in for Alabama. Talk about those 2 guys specifically. Again, some good news and maybe not so good news on the recruiting trail for South Carolina.
Yeah, I can't say I'm shocked by Alabama and Hill. I think his dad really wants him to go to Alabama. I think everybody's situation is different with their parents. I think it was always sort of a long shot to beat Alabama, on a kid from Meridian, Mississippi. I mean, Meridian to Tuscaloosa is like Greenville to Columbia. It's right there. You have to get to Columbia. You got to drive past Bama. You got to drive past. You got to drive away from Ole Miss, Mississippi State. Drive past Bama. Drive past the Auburn exit. Drive past the Georgia exit. Drive past going down 75 to Florida, and all the way to past Clemson, and all the way to Columbia. That's a long drive, and proximity still matters in college football recruiting. I'm not as critical of losing Daniel Hill because I think we all saw it coming. I do think there's a lot of room for criticism as far as the running back recruiting goes here. I mean, there's really not a lot of reasons why you go like 1 for 11. I mean, especially with the story to tell like they have. I think the one shining glimmer of hope at that spot, Chris, is Mario Anderson's really good.
Mhm.
I think we've established that. In fact, if I had a criticism of the quote unquote play calling on Saturday, I would have been a little more patient with Mario. He started out slow, 6 carries, 12 yards. And I don't know whether he went out because he was, banged up or what, but boy, he ended up playing pretty well again. And he's just going to get better. But look, man, that wasn't a guy that you had to go recruit. I mean, his dream was to come to South Carolina. So you lose Daniel Hill, which is a guy that absolutely could have helped. He's tearing it up this year, putting up huge numbers. I can't say I blame the father and the kid and everybody for deciding on Bama though, because look, grew up in Mississippi. I think his dad went to Mississippi State, never got that shot at Bama. I mean, Bama means a lot. I mean, we know that in college football. It's tough to beat them, especially on a kid and they're kind of in their backyard. So, hats off to the Tide and Robert Gillespie for getting him. But that doesn't change the fact that it's getting close to like awful, as far as running back recruiting goes at Carolina, and they're going to hit the portal again. Maybe Trayvon Dunbar, in-state guy, gets an offer, but boy, oh boy, it's just you just lose another one like that you thought you had, and it's disappointing overall. Like I said, kind of saw this coming with Hill, and now Jalua Solomon was a player when he did commit to Auburn. Almost immediately told people on my message board, like, look, stop bashing the kid. this one is not over. And it wasn't. And South Carolina stayed the course. Torian Gray, Taylor Edwards, Shane Beamer, and ultimately flipped him because South Carolina is really where he wanted to be. I think he got caught up with maybe a potential NIL deal at Auburn. His brother, of course, goes to Auburn, but they're not like tied at the hip or anything. So, and then his younger brother is one of the best players in the country for 2025. So maybe you have an inside track there, maybe you don't. But I think that's good. I think running back recruiting has been a known issue. So, hey, what are you going to do to fix it? That's the question. And so we'll see what happens moving forward. But, with the portal these days and stuff, you never know how your fortunes are going to change. I mean, Michigan State got a kid out of Wake Forest a couple of years ago that rushed for 400 yards. He's originally from Central Tennessee. Nobody wanted him. And he's in the NFL for the Broncos now and changed their season.
Mhm.
Nobody saw that coming. Nobody saw Mel Tucker getting fired either. So things change quickly in this sport. And at that position, there's a lot of them out there. You just got to find the right ones. And hopefully this time they will. I think, I think that there's a lot to be determined and discussed at that position moving forward.
Now, JC, taking a closer look at the Missouri game, I guess my simple question to you, JC, is, I mean, what positives are there to take away, if any? I mean, I think maybe you look at Nicholas Harbor getting more involved, and he just continues to, obviously, he's still drinking water out of a fire hose and learning how to play wide receiver. And you see times out there where guys are telling him where to line up and kind of what to do. And so he's figured when he gets opportunities to catch the football or make plays, he tends to make plays. So
yeah, I don't hear anybody talk about his hands anymore, man.
Right.
I mean, everybody's like, he doesn't have any hands. He can't catch. Bull honky. Because man, that guy can catch, I mean, and for a freshman that's unsure of things still, Chris, to when the ball comes his way, he and look, is he the most natural catching the ball? They don't look like Xavier Legette catching it or Juice Wells. But this guy, he looks it in and he just makes sure he's got it. He's really focused on that. I like the little play they ran toward the end too, where they kind of a reverse pitch out to him around the edge. And he seemed fine. So he's coming along. I guess that'd be a positive. I think Jalen Kilgore continues to play very well. I think he's actually played better than Nick Emanware and DQ Smith this year. You know, other than that, Mitch Jeter, good game for him, right?
He got our MVP, but it's not normally a good thing when your field goal kickers.
I know he missed some, but he continues to be good. But yeah, not a lot of positives to take away from it. I mean, and like I said, I'm over the whole well, they came back in the second half And look, I know they're fighting, and I know there's a bunch of good kids on this team and a bunch of guys that try and care. But there's something not being carried from the practice, as Beamer mentioned. There's something not being carried from the practice field to game day, and then you have the injury situation that just, I mean, that had to be deflating. And I'll give you two examples. You know, they're missing Juice Wells too, and Amari Brown's not really himself, um, to a certain extent. But you know, hey, you're down there. You're I think what were they, 24-9, 27-9, something like that. Uh, and you throw a slant pattern, beautiful, beautiful route. Tyshawn Russell runs. He's wide open. He'd have walked in the end zone. He drops it. Juice, or an older
A
receiver,
lot of
another guy.
drops Saturday. There were a lot of drops.
There were, and a very uncharacteristic of some of these guys. But Amarian dropped one. I think Omega dropped one. But you know, that's those guys. If that's Juice, he catches it and scores easily. Um, then later in the game, still it's you know, South Carolina down 15. You know, they're I think 6 minutes left. Uh, Spencer throws that ball. He's thrown Xavier all year, kind of the comeback down the sideline. But this time it's to Omega Blake, and Omega jumps up and he's like an inch short, right? And he goes over his head. It's picked off, and that's basically your ball game. Well, Xavier Legette comes down with that, you know, and so that's the difference, you know, is you got guys out there that just aren't quite there yet, in certain situations and scenarios. So, um, but yeah, there's just not a lot of good. I mean, I'll tell you, I think Spencer Rattler continues to play his butt off. You know, and I think he played well when he had time. But man, you're under that much duress the entire game. You know, it's tough to make plays. But man, he made his share. Carolina, you know, Carolina kind of stayed halfway in it, you know, because of him. And you know, he's starting to get a little more elusive, where you kind of, you know, kind of like that. Have you ever? I don't know if you've ever seen the Snoop Dogg doing the Animal Planet thing, where the lizard gets away from all the snakes. Um, it's on
I've seen the
Instagram.
voiceover. Yeah.
Yeah, the voice over there. That kind of reminded me of Spencer Rattler sometimes on Saturday. You know, like, oh man, there's a bunch of snakes there. Oh, I always get in the way, you know. He's actually gotten more elusive, but I mean, you can only do so much when and I don't know. The one thing I'm not sure of, and I don't even know if there was a solution to this, because I don't know what you do when your offensive line's just getting destroyed and they can't block. But you kind of do coming in Missouri. That's kind of their game. You know, they're going to send a bunch of guys at you. They did it last year, um, and said, "Okay, we're going to just try to beat you." So I don't know if there was a play calling solution to that or not, Chris, because it was just so bang bang them getting back there. But you know, that was kind of crazy. And then just the defense is just giving them. It is crazy too, because you look at the D and they will get some momentum, and then inevitably something crazy happens. The other disappointing part of it is the penalties. You know, to untimely penalties. Not a very disciplined football team. I think Carolina's getting down toward the bottom in penalties in the league right now. You can't afford that when you're that shorthanded, on the road against a good team. And I'll also give Missouri credit. I think they're a good football team. I hesitate. I mean, I hesitate to say what they'll do against Georgia, because I don't know. It's in Athens, but you know, they gave them a game last year, so they're not going to be intimidated by the Dogs. That could be a heck of a football game here in a couple of weeks if Missouri continues to play at this level. So, you know, yet again, you know, I kind of look at it, and South Carolina's really. I mean, you could argue North Carolina probably is a game they should have won because it's not an SEC game. But South Carolina, yet again, it's not like they lost to the Sisters of the Poor. I mean, they lost to a really good top 20 football team. So, but yeah, it's the SEC. You're going to face that week in and week out. And when you lose a game like you did to Florida, which is inexcusable, you have to go get one back somehow. That's how you win in this league. And so, you know, another opportunity that didn't go so well. So that's where it's at. It's 2-5, and we'll see what happens.
And to your point, JC, not just that you did not go on the road and get one back after the Florida loss. But I think the way that you lost and the way you're losing games is what's really taking the toll on people. Obviously, JC, you and I both know coaches are not getting 6, 7, 8 years to get things figured out. And I've been even somewhat surprised, JC, by the quickness of some to really question the future under Shane Beamer. When I would have told you in the offseason, JC, that Shane Beamer was an untouchable man because what he had done at South Carolina, your confidence level in the middle of year 3, because again, no coach is immune to the effects of losing. So sitting at 2-5, 1-4 in the SEC, like it or not, these question marks start to arise. Do you think it's fair or unfair, the chatter about his future at South Carolina? And then on top of that, when I asked the question of, is he the guy for the long term, how important will this transfer portal cycle this next offseason go in answering that question?
Those are kind of different things. As far as him getting questioned, man, I mean, we're living in a world where Sam Pittman's about to get fired at Arkansas.
Mhm.
I didn't see that coming, considering how bad was Arkansas when he took over, man, after the Chad Morris debacle and all that. And plus, Pittman's like beloved.
He's their
So
version. He's their version of Shane Beamer.
yeah, I mean, so you don't get a lot of time, no matter who you are. Matt Luke was beloved at Ole Miss and got fired after 3 years. Um, it's just the way the SEC is, and the money's too great, and there's too much at stake, and it's too competitive. It's becoming a miniature NFL. NFL not for long if you're not winning, right? And so, am I surprised by that? Yeah, I think people are rushing to judgment. And it's mainly the crowd that there's a portion of the fan base. It's a very small but vocal version that they're not ever going to be happy with any hire. They're going to destroy the hire against all evidence that it's working out. They're not going to give people a chance. It's a good point. I mean, and some people around here like they don't. I think a lot of times they sort of live life through other programs. In other words, if it's not Steve Spurrier or Lou Holtz, and it's somebody that's won, they're very impatient. Um, Now with Muschamp, I think we knew coming in because of his track record at Florida, which was an albatross around his neck, because you had 4 years of Gator football not living up to standards under him, so he was behind the 8 ball. He couldn't afford that 4th-year dip, right? Beamer, there's no track record to kind of. I mean, basically, what he's done here is all he's done. So there's a little bit more patience, I think. But you can't in the SEC normally survive what I call the catastrophic year. Here you go. Is it going to be a catastrophic year or is it not? And that's going to be determined by the last 4 games. I think South Carolina, believe it or not, has a chance to win all 4. They're all at home. None of those teams are really even at the level of most of the teams the Gamecocks have played this year outside of Furman. They're games they should win. I don't know about the injury situation and how that maybe evens the playing field. But South Carolina has a shot at all of them. The Clemson game, obviously, it would be the toughest one I would circle because you just don't know with those guys. I mean, hell, they may be sitting on wins over Notre Dame and North Carolina and be 8-3 and the hottest team in the country when you play them. That's just kind of how the ball bounces sometimes with that rivalry. But right now, shoot, I don't know that Clemson's more than a field goal favorite in the game. I certainly don't think Kentucky at South Carolina, after Kentucky goes through an absolute gauntlet, including Alabama, before they come to Columbia. I don't know that they're going to be favored on Carolina's home field. Certainly, Vandy and Jacksonville State won't. So, but look, well, let's say you lose to Jacksonville State, or Vandy, or you finish 3-9. I mean, that is tough to come back from. A lot of times. I mean, because what that does is there's automatically hot seat talk that goes into next year, and it affects your recruiting, it affects your entire organization. My guess is it's not going to end up that bad, but right now you can't rule anything out, man. So and that's not a South Carolina thing or a Shane Beamer thing or anything like that. That's the way of college football these days. And nobody's patient, and maybe it's the world too. Who knows? But I would think he'd be fine. But like I said, the bottom can't completely fall out. I mean, because at that point, what are you going to do to get momentum back? Uh, Whole new staff, dramatic. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what you do at that point. But there's 5 games left, and I think Carolina should be in pretty good shape for at least 3, maybe 4 of them. So we'll see what happens. And Chris, this year's schedule's different. There are some things that are just factual. Sometimes schedule sounds like an excuse, but it's just a fact that this is unlike most of the Carolina schedules we've seen in our lives. Most of the time, these games they're playing in November, with the exception of Clemson, are played like either spread out or they're played into September-ish. Usually Kentucky, Vandy's in October-ish. Sometimes Kentucky's right there at the beginning of October. Your Jacksonville States come early, usually back to back. I mean, this year it's just been there's no real breathing room outside of Furman until the end. And so that's kind of the way it bounced this year. And so we'll see. We'll see if that matters. We'll see if that matters.
Yeah, to your point, JC, last year you had Charlotte and SC State back-to-back early in the season to kind of get a groove, get momentum, figure some things out, and you just have not had that stretch this year. Really quickly, JC, I know we got to get you out of here. First things first, it's a real short answer. Sam Pittman fired Dan Enos midseason. Some Gamecock fans, a lot in Gamecock Nation, are clamoring for Shane Beamer to do the same with Clayton White. Do you think that's a good idea? And if so, or if not, why or why not, in your opinion?
Right now, I don't think it's a good idea. I don't know who would call the defense. I mean, and if anybody on that side, I mean, who would have, maybe Travian Robertson could call it, I would think. Torian Gray, I'm sure, could call defense. I mean, he's called both of them. Travian calls one. I mean, I don't know how you do it because Clayton White's scheme is Clayton White's scheme, and so who's gonna run it? I mean, I don't know. I thought firing Enos was kind of one of those things, Chris. It was sudden because Arkansas wasn't losing because of their offense. They hung 31 on LSU. They lost 38-31 to BYU. They lost 24-21 to Alabama, 27-20 to Ole Miss.
I think it was definitely a desperation move of a coach that's on the hot seat and needs to use the coordinator as a scapegoat. No question.
They completely crapped the bed against against Mississippi State. Let's not fool ourselves here. But outside of me kind of questioning if KJ Jefferson specifically was a fit for that scheme, because I thought KJ was in the right scheme. I mean, you talk about injuries too. Rocket Sanders wasn't healthy all year. The line wasn't that good. So I don't know. That's just an example of one bad day at the office and you're out. Yeah. And look, sometimes karma happens, right? You remember the Nick Saban thing when Dan Enos worked there, and he's about to. I think Sarkisian had gone to the NFL or something. Enos is going to be the OC at Bama. Saban sits down in the press or the staff meeting. Where the hell is Dan? Well, Dan left to go to Miami to coach under Manny Diaz and didn't tell anybody. So he's been at 13 different schools. So I guess the second time around at Arkansas didn't work out. I don't know. I don't know him that well, but just seems kind of weird, all the things that have happened to him. But I if there were somebody else sitting on the staff that I knew would be a rock solid defensive play caller, I'd be for it. If this were a Marcus Satterfield situation where it wasn't necessarily his play calling, like his overall approach to offense, period, was holding them back. Right. I think we found out when you give Marcus Satter, you don't give him the buffet, you give him the kiddie menu. He can call plays. He was fine calling plays. It's when he outsmarted himself. I don't know if that's Clayton White's issue. I think Clayton White's scheme is just getting exposed right now. And then there's some breakdowns that happened at inopportune times. So, and that happens. It happened to Tyrone Nix here. It happened to Brian Van Gorder throughout his career. Happened to Joe Lee Dunn. Defensive coordinators sometimes have a shelf life, and they're good for a while, and then they get figured out and they don't adjust. The great ones always evolve, always adjust, or just so damn hard to figure out that they're always going to be tough. But that may be what we're seeing here. It's a good first couple of years. You got some turnovers. It's fine. Everything's good, but the book is out, so to speak. And it certainly seems that way when you watch other teams consistently get good matchups, good looks, and they seem to kind of know what you're kind of trying to do and what you're trying to hide and how to find it and expose it.
JC, last thing, Gamecocks travel to College Station, take on a Texas A&M team that, somewhat reeling in their own right. This is a game that Jimbo Fisher, I think if you see Texas A&M fall to the Gamecocks, he's going to be out of there, buyout or not. But South Carolina enters as a 2-touchdown underdog. They go into a venue they've never won at before in Kyle Field. What chances do you give South Carolina against a Texas A&M team that they're not world beaters by any stretch, but you look at the injury report and then you look at the line of scrimmage. If there's one thing, JC, Texas A&M does have, it is elite pass rushers, and that could spell another long day for Spencer Rattler and that Gamecocks offense. I mean, you look at this game, is there any glimmer of hope? You see a path to South Carolina pulling this upset, or do you see another tough day at the office?
Well, it's been such a weird year, Chris. I mean, you wouldn't expect Virginia to beat North Carolina. I didn't expect that Mississippi State Arkansas outcome. Not 7-3. Not without Mississippi State's defense.
That was like 2000 SEC.
Yeah, so I mean, that's like Mississippi State's been in a bunch of those.
That had
years.
the Jefferson Pilot feel to it,
Dave Neal called that one.
The 3 days.
But 3 days. But I didn't see Virginia beating North Carolina. I didn't see that coming. It's been a weird year, but the matchup you do circle and ready because is Carolina's offensive line versus a mighty talented A&M defensive line. A&M has 29 sacks this year. Carolina has 13. It's down there where Carolina hasn't won. That's a noon kickoff. Sometimes they don't show up. Sometimes A&M honestly does not show up.
11 a.m. local time kickoff.
Yeah. I mean, I think their 11 a.m. kickoffs last year were like Massachusetts. And there was only like 20 people there because it was cold. And I think they ended up pulling away at the end, 24-7 or something. And then Florida beat them pretty good, 41-24 down there. But this is a better Aggies team than last season. The shame of it is with Carolina struggling on defense like they are is I don't think Texas A&M is very good on offense. I don't think Bobby Petrino has been the answer they thought he would be. I don't think Max Johnson's been the answer that I thought he would be when he took over Connor Wegman. I thought, well, heck, Max Johnson did all this. Max Johnson did all this at LSU. He looked good last year at A&M. Something's not right quite there. They don't have great protection either. They don't have a great offensive line. They're talented, but it's not what I would call one of the best in the league. So that's a shame because their weakness sort of matches up with Carolina's weakness. And Carolina's biggest weakness right now, thanks in no small part to injuries, is matching up against what makes them, potentially elite on defense. So it's going to be a long day at the office, most likely. But I'll say this, and I didn't mean to like just bogart Shane's line because he said that after the Missouri game, tough day at the office. But you go shoot your shot. You don't have anything to lose with this one. This is not. You win this one, you're playing with house money. You lose, you're expected to lose. Come back, regroup, and you got to get grind for the Gasparilla. Grind for the Gasparilla Bowl, bro. That 6 wins. Get to the Gasparilla Bowl this year. Try your best to win it. Regroup, make changes. Look into it. Examine the program. Take stock. But this A&M game is going to be awfully, awfully difficult. Especially, I think we're going to get the injury report here pretty soon, and I don't expect it to be positive. So we'll see what happens.
JC Shurburtt of Inside the Gamecocks of the Big Spur. Check those guys out over to Inside the Gamecocks every single day, 11 to 1 p.m. Eastern. And, of course, I go on Inside the Gamecocks every Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. JC Shurburtt, appreciate you taking the time, my friend. Looking forward to do it again next week.
Hey, thanks, Chris.